Hi, welcome back to the channel. This is part 12 and in this episode I'm going to be welding up the front panel and the deformation panel and getting them fully fitted and sorting all the door gaps out, etc. Whilst I'm waiting for the paint to fully harden, I thought I'd have a look at the front deformation panel and how it fits to the bumper. It's got holes in it and it's got 4 captive nuts welded in, and it's got a large slot here. But the bumper has got 4 holes in it. And the old deformation panel just had 4 captive nuts. Right, well, I've now got it all centred. The bumper is in, I'm happy that the bumper is in the right place. So I'm now going to drill some pilot holes through into the deformation panel. The bolts I'm using to bolt the bumper on are stainless steel M8 bolts, so I want to weld an M8 nut underneath each of these holes, all 4 of them, and then I want to weld up these holes. There's several of them in the front of the bumper, because if I don't, you're going to get water, rainwater, that's going to land on the top here. It's going to run down, run into it, and then rust out the bottom, collect and rust out the bottom of the deformation panel, which you don't want. So I'm going to fill all of these holes up, and I'll probably fill these ones up as well. Holes all welded up and cleaned up now, so we're ready to try and fit this to the front of the bus. There's a couple of holes in the bottom valance that presumably should have large rubber grommets or bungs in them, and I expect they're there for access to spray wax oil or whatever into the cavity. So I'm going to blank those off with some, it's like a rubberized flashing tape for roofs. It's self-adhesive, you can warm it up and then it sticks really well. So I'm going to stick this on the underside of the bus to fill the holes up, block them off, and if I ever want to gain access, I can just peel them off. Front deformation panel in position. It's centred with the car, with the bus, and these end caps are going to fit all right. I've tested them out and they seem fine. So the next thing I need to do is prepare this for welding on. So I'm going to drill lots of plug weld holes along the top, and also I think on the bottom I'm just going to do some stitch welds from behind onto it. Next thing I want to do is refit it and then mark off where all the weld holes are going to be, so I can clean up the surface of the front panel, and also mark where I want the stitch welds to go, so I can clean up the appropriate areas on this panel and on the front panel. Right, well, I'm now ready to fit the front deformation panel. Before I do so, I want to paint the inside of it with wax oil, and also the inside of the panel, the panel that I'm welding it to, with wax oil as well. Really good method of protection against rust, etc. But I need to be careful not to get it onto any of the surfaces that I'm going to be welding. I've actually had this on the cooker, heating it up for the last quarter of an hour to get it nice and liquid. welds underneath, as you've seen, but I'm having a bit of an issue with the quality of them because the wax that I've put in here is melting and it's running down and making it very difficult to weld. So I've stopped now. I mean, the welds that I've done, they'll be strong enough. They're not the prettiest, but they'll be strong enough. And then when it's all cooled down, I can go over, clean up small areas and then weld them. So I'll concentrate on the top now. Right, the reason why I've been re-drilling these is because originally I drilled them with a 6mm hole, and when I was clamping down that side I heard one of these pop. So I'm re-drilling them with an 8mm drill which chamfers the edge on here, and it also, I'm drilling halfway through the inner panel, so the weld is much stronger. So I'm really happy with the welds that I've just done, and there's no way they're going to come apart at all. So I'm going to carry on doing that all the way along. Well, that's the deformation panel, all welded on, all finished. And I must say that this panel, the deformation panel, is Brazilian made, and the inner panel was an original VW made panel, and the two didn't match up. They didn't have the same profile, and I found it quite difficult to get them to line up nicely and get them tight, especially at the ends for the plug welding, and that was mainly because they're both made out of, I think, 1.5mm mild steel. So they're obvious, for obvious reasons, they've got to be strong, and they were therefore difficult to alter the shape of them to get them to fit. But I have managed it, and you know, it's turned out really nicely, but it wasn't straightforward. Next job now is to reroute the wiring harness and various other cables and this drain pipe, and then I want to paint some wax oil on the inside of here and on the A-pillars posts before I fit the front panel. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fit this drain pipe. The original one was this, which is seen better days. So I've got another bit of piping, and I would have thought that it should go over that and through that hole, but that hole, if you get a piece of pipe that's wide enough to go over there, won't fit through there. Because ideally you want it over there, so any water dripping down is going to come straight down the pipe and not seep out the outside and rust this panel out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bond this in with this U-Pol Tiger seal, which I know from past experience sticks like the proverbial. And if I bond this in and get a good seal, you know, no water is going to get past it. So I think that's what I'm going to do. Seal it in, keep it watertight. Obviously I'll keep an eye on that once the vehicle's up and running and monitor it to make sure that it's not leaking at all. If it is, I'll have to come up with something different. And then this end, I'm just going to push down into this slot, which fits really nice and snugly in there. Next we got the wiring harness that I need to thread through the hole that I've drilled earlier. This goes to the horn. This one goes to the brake master cylinder and is the brake switch. That's an earth. So those can stay on that side, and this I need to thread through that hole. These two wires are wires that I've put in, and therefore the temperature gauge and oil pressure gauge. What I've got is a grommet. It's the biggest one I've got in my box, and I've split it, and I'm going to try and prise it on. Yeah, I think that's all right. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just fill the gap there with a bit of that sealant. Last thing I need to do before I can put the front panel on is to get some wax oil on here and on the A-posts, and making sure that I don't make the same mistake I made with this, where I had wax coming out whilst I was welding. So I need to avoid all the weld areas but get wax oil on in places, especially on the A-posts, which is going to be very difficult to get to after the panel is on. And I'm thinking especially of these return lips, because there's only a couple of spot welds on the inside here, but this edge is what tends to rust, so I need to make sure that that's well protected. think the first thing I'm going to do is put a tack weld on the top here. The top here, I need to get the gap distance here the same as it was on the old panel, which I have, and I've got about a 3 or 4 millimetre overlap on the inside panel, i.e. this lip here is about 3 or 4 millimetres higher than the overlap of the inner panel. So I'm going to put a little stitch weld on the back here, and that's how I'm going to attach this. That's why I haven't drilled this top lip for plug welds, because I knew that I was going to have to lift this a bit. And then I'm going to pull the bottom, unclamp these and then pull the bottom down, and that should take this lip, the shelf here, and pull it down slightly, which is what I want, so that when I get the windscreen rubber in, the water will drip off this and won't puddle in there, which is what sometimes happens, and that's why you see, I think, a lot of these buses with very rusty areas underneath the windscreen seal. So that's going to be my next job, to put a couple of tack welds in here just to hold it in place. To put another tack weld here and another one there, because when I was pulling this down then it was pulling the sides too far down, so I'm going to do 2 more tacks and then try and pull the bottom down. Panel fitted. I've got both edges hooked round. I think all I need to do now is finish off all the welds around here, and around the bottom and the inside of the windscreen, and then fit the doors. and start looking at the gaps down the sides, because I suspect they're going to need quite a bit of work in one way or another. Right, that's all the welding finished on the front panel. It's been quite a big job. It's been quite tricky because, like the deformation panel, this panel is Brazilian and wasn't the best fit, so I've had to do quite a lot of pulling and twisting and bashing, etc. The true test is going to be when I get the doors on, but I'm happy with how it's gone so far. The only thing I've got left to do are these two small panels that go on the ends of the deformation panels and connect it to the bottom of the front of the wheel arches. But I'm not going to put these on until I get the doors on, so I can get this edge lined up properly. Also, there are a couple of spot welds that I need to put down the lip on the sides. But again, I'm going to do those after I've fitted the doors, because I expect a bit of work to do on the edges to get the gaps just right. So the next job I want to do is clean up all the welds, grind them all down and clean everything up. And then I'm going to fit the two front doors. The next job I need to do before I can put the doors on is to make small repair sections to fill up this gap here between the outer skin of the windscreen pillar and the bottom of the front panel on both sides. Now I think it's time to see whether the door fits and how good this gap is down the front. Now on, and it fits okay. The gaps around here are fine, around the top and the B post and along the wing. I've got a little bit of an issue with this. Is slightly too proud by about 2 or 3 millimeters. There's an area here which needs to come out a bit, and then there's an area here which needs to go in a bit. So I'm going to lightly tap it . To get that flush. And then this bit give that a tap like that. I know it seems a bit drastic, but it will work. Now I can see that that profile is much better now, and that swage line is starting to line up a lot more. Now there's an area here that needs to come out a bit, just there. The other issue I've got is that the wing, the wheel arch, sorry, at the bottom is flush all the way along, no problem, but when we get to this part here, it starts to kick out by about 4 millimeters, 4 or 5 millimeters at the front, and stops about there. And I'll fill this up. It's too proud. So I think what I'm going to do, quite drastic, but I think it'll work, is I'm going to cut into the wing, into the wheel arch along this line, and then take out a slither or a wedge of metal, knock it in and re-weld it, and that should bring all of that, the top part, back in. Now that's much better. it lines up nicely, it's nice and flush along. And if I now put that on, that finishes it off nicely. Okay, having slept on it overnight, I've decided that the best thing to do, and I've looked at other buses to see, you know, what the right gap here should be. And at the moment, I'm ranging from about 5mm up to 8mm. And I think 5 or 6mm is about right. So I'm going to stick with that, which means I'm going to add a bit of metal to this lip here, from about here down to here, just by putting some welds onto the lip and then grinding them down. So I'm going to take the door off and get that started. Well, I think, as you can see, it's still a bit uneven. I've got a bit more to put in places. I mean, just there, that gap there is about right. That's too big, and that's a bit too big. So I need to add a bit more, tiny bit there, some more there, down to about there, and some more there. So I'll mark it out and then take the door off again. Now that I've got this gap just right and it's all lined up and nice and flush with the door, the last piece I need to fit is this little end cap here, which welds onto there and tidies up this space really nicely. So, but before I can weld it, I need to prepare it, because I'm going to put some spot welds down here and a couple on here at the bottom, and then this is wrapped around that bottom lip. So I'm going to do that next. Okay, well that's this side totally finished now. All I've got to do is fold that in, this lip in, but I'll do that when I've taken the door off. So I'm happy with all of this now. All the metalwork is finished. I've got nice gaps. So I'm now going to do the other side. Now I've got this end plate welded on, I can have a look at the gap down here and the way this lines up. This side on the whole is probably better than the other side, although I've got an area between about there and there where I'm going to have to add a bit. So I'll do the same as I did on the other side. I'll weld a bead onto the end and grind it down, and then there's a bit here which needs to be knocked out by about 3mm, and I need to take a bit off it, but I'll probably do that by folding it round a bit more. I'll have a play with that. I might have to grind a bit off and put a bead weld on there to secure it. So yeah, small amount off there, a bit onto there, and then the rest of it is all right. So that's going to be the next job. Right, well, I'm happy with the fit of the door now. Got nice gaps all the way around. It's all nice and flush. So I think that is the front panel now fully fitted. So the next step is going to be to prepare it for paint, but that's going to be in the next episode. So I think that's going to be it for this one. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.